Hello everyone, my name is Jocelyn Jones and I'm the founder of Faith on the Journey and the author of the book Breaking the Power of the Mask. And I want to welcome you to part 3 of our Grief Myth series. If you've been following along, we've been diving deep into various topics related to grief this month, specifically exploring some of the things that we might have learned or believed about grief that have caused us further pain or confusion around this subject. And today I want to discuss with you a myth that I personally believed for years. I always thought that grief was something that you only experience when someone you love died. And yes, of course we'll experience it in those moments, but we can also find ourselves grieving a lost dream that we've had. So I want to have us take a look at a story out of the Bible in 1 Samuel of a woman named Hannah who went through a season of grieving a lost dream. Hannah desperately wanted a child, but God had closed her wound, and her loving husband tried everything he could to comfort her, giving her a double portion of everything he had. But nothing seemed to console her. He would say to her, "Why don't you eat?" Or, "Why are you so downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?" But to her, it wasn't that she didn't love her husband. It was that she desperately wanted a child, and her love for her husband was not going to take that desire away from her. But the Bible said in her bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. And we witnessed in the story Hannah grieving. She was grieving the fact that she was barren, and her dream of having a child seemed to be lost, and she was in despair. But here's the beautiful thing that we witness in her story. Hannah called out to God, and it wasn't anything casual that she was doing here. This woman did the ugly cry before God, and she prayed her heart out to the point where Eli the prophet thought that she was drunk. And she responded by saying, "No, I ain't drunk. I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief." And sometimes we so desperately want something in our lives, whether it's a husband or a wife or a child, a career, or whatever you've had your heart set out on, and it just seems like this thing is not in the cards for you. And we can find ourselves grieving the loss of a dream that we once had. But I want to share this message to encourage you today. God sees those tears, and He hears every prayer. And God's response to our prayers are either yes, not yet, or no, because I have something better for you. And we have to learn to believe that God's no is as merciful as His yes. His no is not because He doesn't love us. For Jeremiah 29:11 says, "I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." And God's plans for us are from an eternal lens. He's looking at our lives from a wide-angle view. So sometimes what we want doesn't align with His eternal plans for us. But we know that His plans for us are good. And whatever He has planned for us are better than anything we can ever imagine for ourselves. So hold on to that. But then sometimes, as we see in the story of Hannah, God's response was not yet. Because the Bible clearly states that she was barren. She was trying for the longest to conceive a child. But Hannah cried out to the Lord, and the Lord remembered her, and she conceived. And I can only imagine what that answered prayer did for Hannah's faith. How God allowed her to birth a child from a barren womb. And so I encourage you today, if you are grieving right now the loss of a dream that you have for yourself, and it seems as though God is not listening to your prayers, please know that God remembers you. He hasn't forgotten about you. And if the thing that you're praying for hasn't manifested yet, know that God's response is either not yet or I have something better. So hold on to this message and visit our ministry website at faithonthejourney.org for more resources on grief and loss. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to receive more messages of hope to encourage you on your journey. Be blessed, everyone.